the way I manage my personal wealth is I'm hedged. I have a tail.
It's a 12-footer. Season.
.4 left. Will that be a flagrant? Nowitzki's down.
Season, and we're looking to build off a promising season the previous year.
Shouldn't have won one? What are y'all, over Kobe?
Should not have won the...
Hell yeah, over Kobe.
You know what I mean? Just know how to get it done. You know what I mean?
The summer of 2004, Mark Cuban was staring at a decision he believed was easy. Steve Nash was 30 years old, had a history of back problems, and wanted a long-term deal. Cuban's front office had done the math, weighed the injury risk, and concluded that locking a 30-year-old point guard into 6 guaranteed years was simply too dangerous. Dallas had other pieces. Dallas had Dirk Nowitzki, who was already one of the best offensive players in the world. They would find another point guard. They would be fine. 11 months later, Nash stood at a podium in Phoenix, holding the NBA's most valuable player trophy. The Suns had gone from 29 wins to 62. Their offense was unlike anything the league had seen in a decade. And Nash, the player Cuban had essentially decided wasn't worth the risk, had just beaten his old team in the playoffs on his way to becoming the sport's most celebrated floor general. The trophy didn't silence anyone. It ignited a debate that still hasn't ended. Because when you win back-to-back MVPs without being the biggest scorer on the court, without dunking over defenders, without a physical signature that breaks defensive schemes in half, people start asking questions. Was Nash actually the most valuable player in basketball? Or did he just benefit from a fast-paced system that inflated everyone around him? To answer that honestly, you have to go back to the beginning. Not just the summer of 2004, but all the way to where Nash started and how far he had already traveled before Phoenix ever gave him the keys. Stephen Nash was born in Johannesburg, South Africa, in February of 1974 and raised in Victoria, British Columbia, a city not exactly known for producing NBA point guards. There were no elite youth basketball pipelines in Victoria, no recruiting circuits, no summers at premier prep academies. Nash played soccer too, and there was a period where his athletic future could have gone in a completely different direction. But basketball became the focus, and Nash became good enough at it to attract attention from American college programs, eventually landing at Santa Clara University, a mid-major school in California that flew well beneath the radar of major recruiting services. He was good at Santa Clara, not just regionally good, genuinely good. But nobody confused Santa Clara for a basketball factory, and when the 1996 draft arrived, Nash was a 15th overall pick, not a projected franchise cornerstone. Phoenix selected him, and the fans in the arena made their feelings known immediately. They booed, not a polite, uncertain murmur. Actual boos because Phoenix fans had wanted someone else. And instead they got a skinny Canadian point guard from a school that barely registered on national recruiting radars. Nobody in that building believed they were watching the beginning of anything particularly significant. Nash spent 2 years in Phoenix as a backup behind Kevin Johnson and Jason Kidd, two of the most accomplished point guards the game had produced. That experience mattered more than the minutes. Kidd's court vision, Johnson's command of pace, Nash watched it from close range and internalized it, and when Dallas acquired him in 1998, he left Phoenix as something considerably more developed than the raw prospect who had drawn those boos. The trade itself carried a layer of irony that would only fully reveal itself years later. The pick Phoenix received eventually became Shawn Marion, one of Nash's most important future teammates. In Dallas, Nash grew into a legitimate star. Paired with Nowitzki and Michael Finley, he built one of the most effective offensive partnerships in the Western Conference. He made the All-Star team in 2002 and again in 2003. He developed a pull-up jumper that defenders couldn't take away without conceding driving lanes, and driving lanes with Nash were dangerous. Not because he finished everything himself, but because he always found the right pass at the end of them. In 2003, he helped lead Dallas to the Western Conference Finals. And even in that elimination against a San Antonio team that was building toward a dynasty, Nash had proven he could carry an offense in high-leverage playoff basketball. He was averaging over 15 points and 7 assists per game as a Maverick, and the argument could be made he was being underappreciated even then. Then the contract ran out, and Dallas had a choice. Cuban and his front office offered roughly $9 million per year, but balked at the length of the commitment. Nash's back had given him trouble before. 30 years old was the beginning of the end for most players, not the start of a second act. The Mavericks had Nowitzki locked in as their franchise cornerstone. They calculated that paying a 30-year-old point guard at the top of the market over a long deal carried too much risk for too uncertain a return. Phoenix offered something in the neighborhood of $63 to $65 million over 6 years. Dallas declined to match. Don Nelson, who had coached Nash in Dallas and understood better than almost anyone what that passing created for a basketball team, watched the decision go down and didn't hide his reaction. "I never dreamed we'd lose Nash," he said. "We lost a big part of our team and we don't have anything to fill it." Cuban would eventually publicly acknowledge he had misread Nash's longevity. By then, that was already the understatement of the decade. The Phoenix Suns in 2003-04 had won 29 games. They were a lottery team, a franchise in genuine dysfunction, with offense and defense that both ranked in the bottom half of the league. Into that environment came Mike D'Antoni as head coach, bringing a vision of basketball built around speed spacing and ball movement, a system designed to attack before defenses could organize, to turn every possession into a three-point look or a layup before 10 seconds elapsed. The concept was revolutionary in its application, even if the individual components, pace, spacing, screening, cutting, were classical basketball ideas. What D'Antoni understood was that most teams ran those concepts in moderation. He wanted to run them at full speed all the time, with a point guard who never needed the game to slow down to make the right decision. The system had one critical dependency. It needed a point guard who could see the floor at full pace and never make the wrong read. Not occasionally, not usually, almost never. Because at 7 seconds or less, one bad decision didn't just waste a possession, it could kill the rhythm the entire offense depended on. D'Antoni needed Nash. The oral history of that signing is striking for how immediately the fit became apparent. Before the season even started and pickup runs on Phoenix courts, Nash walked into the gym with players he had never competed alongside and made them better on the spot. Not eventually. Not after weeks of training camp had taught them the scheme, immediately by instinct, because his basketball intelligence was already calibrated to see the game at that level. D'Antoni would later describe Nash as a player who made maybe only a handful of bad decisions all year, always the right pass, always the right man, always the right timing. That quality didn't develop under the Suns system. Nash brought it with him, and the system gave it room to operate at maximum scale. What happened next was one of the most dramatic single-season transformations in modern NBA history. Phoenix went 62-20 in 2004-05. That is a 33-win improvement over the prior year. The Suns posted the best record in the entire league. They led the NBA in scoring at around 110 points per game, the highest team average in roughly a decade. Their offense wasn't just effective, it was historically distinctive, running the 7 seconds or less attack that D'Antoni envisioned, and Nash executed with precision that defenses couldn't consistently disrupt. Every time a team made an adjustment, dropping back to protect the rim, switching to stop the pick and roll, going under screens, Nash found the counter. The right skip pass, the right drive and kick. The right early offense read before the opposing defense had even crossed half court. Nash finished the regular season averaging 15.5 points and 11.5 assists per game. He led the league in assists. He shot 50% from the field, 43% from three, and nearly 90% from the free throw line. His efficiency across all three categories simultaneously approached the 50-40/90 threshold that only the most complete offensive players in the sport's history have reached. But the most telling numbers weren't the ones Nash produced. They were the ones that vanished when he left the floor. The Suns went 60-15 in games Nash played. When he missed time, a handful of games here, a few more there, they went 2-5. Joe Johnson, one of Nash's teammates that season, put it in the plainest possible terms years later. We had a stretch where Nash would miss like 8 or 10 games, and we probably won 1 game. When we had him on the floor, we were blowing out teams left and right. When he wasn't on the floor, it was like, why is the game so hard? That on-off split was not a coaching coincidence or a favorable schedule aligning just right. It was the clearest kind of evidence a team sport can produce. Remove one player and the machine stops working. Nash was not a passenger in a fast system. He was the reason the system functioned. Phoenix without him was an ordinary basketball team. Phoenix with him was the best record in the NBA. In the playoffs, that version of Nash got sharper. He averaged close to 24 points and 11 assists across 15 postseason games, carrying the Suns through a sweep of Memphis and then into a second-round series against Dallas, his old team, the team that let him go, run by the man who had decided the risk wasn't worth it. That series needed no extra theater. The drama was already embedded. Nash didn't make speeches or manufacture moments. He just played with the same meticulous precision that had defined his entire season. Phoenix won the series in 6 games. They advanced. Whatever Dallas thought they were releasing back into free agency 12 months earlier, they had spent 6 games watching it dismantle their defense play by play. The Suns eventually lost the Western Conference Finals to San Antonio in 5 games. San Antonio was the defending champion and would win the title that year. Losing in that round hurt, but the case for Nash's MVP had already been made in full, and the vote reflected it. 65 first-place votes and 1,066 total points, beating Shaquille O'Neal by 34 points in one of the closest MVP races in recent memory. That margin deserves a moment, because the Shaq case was not constructed from sentiment. O'Neal had joined Miami in the offseason after his departure from the Lakers, and the Heat immediately became the best team in the Eastern Conference. They went 59-23. Shaq averaged 23 points, 10 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks per game while shooting 60% from the field in 73 games. He was all-NBA first team. By every measurement of individual dominance, he was operating at an elite level. And the argument that Miami's transformation was built around him was entirely real. But the voters kept returning to the same essential question. What did this player do for his team that no one else could have done? And in Phoenix, the answer was overwhelming. Nash had taken a 29-win franchise and turned it into 62 wins in one season. He had led the league in assists while shooting at an efficiency level most scorers in any era never sustained. Shaq had transformed Miami, but Miami had Pat Riley and a quality veteran roster as its foundation. Phoenix had a lottery team, and Nash had turned it into the best record in basketball. Skip Bayless, writing for ESPN at the time, argued flatly that O'Neal was the rightful winner. He wasn't alone in that position, and the race was close enough that the disagreement was legitimate. Nash, for his part, accepted the trophy in the most characteristic way possible. He invited his teammates onto the stage, calling it a team award, redirecting his own moment toward the people who helped him earn it. Then the second season began, and everything changed. On October 18, 2005, Amar Stoudemire underwent microfracture surgery on his knee. Stoudemire had averaged 26 points and 9 rebounds the prior season. He was an all-star. He was the most explosive finishing threat in the 7 seconds or less system. The player Nash fed on lobs and pick and rolls with a precision that made every set look prearranged. Now he was gone. He played just 3 games all season, reduced to a near-invisible presence in a campaign built entirely around his absence. Joe Johnson had already left for Atlanta. Quentin Richardson was gone. The Suns were not simply without their co-star, they were without most of the supporting infrastructure that had made the prior season possible. What Nash did in 2005-06 without those pieces is, by any reasonable standard, the more remarkable of his 2 MVP performances. He averaged 18.8 points per game, a career high. 4.2 rebounds per game, another career high. 10.5 assists per game, leading the league for the 2nd consecutive year. He shot 51% from the field, 44% from 3, and 92% from the free throw line, leading the league from the free throw line while simultaneously leading it in assists. That combination, posting a true 50-40/90 season while serving as the league's most prolific distributor, placed Nash at a level of all-around offensive productivity that almost no player in NBA history had reached at this kind of volume. Nash has 450, 40, 90 seasons across his career. That is more than anyone in NBA history has ever produced. Boris Diaw had arrived from Atlanta as part of the Joe Johnson sign and trade, a versatile forward who had been largely unremarkable through his first several professional seasons. Under Nash, Diaw averaged over 13 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists per game, and won the NBA's Most Improved Player award. Not because Diaw's talent had been invented that year, it was always there, but because Nash's decision-making put him in positions to succeed that no prior point guard had consistently created for him. The blast radius of Nash's passing extended to whoever lined up beside him. And Diaw was the most visible example that season of how dramatically a player's output could shift when Nash was orchestrating. The Suns without Stoudemire still won 54 games. They won the Pacific Division. They fielded one of the best offenses in the league for the second consecutive season. Bomani Jones, writing for ESPN Page 2 in February of that year, made the case with a directness that has aged well. Nash must be the MVP. Because Phoenix had the third best record in the Western Conference despite playing without a 26-point-per-game All-Star, and Nash was the only consistent go-to option left. His per-game numbers were up: more points, more rebounds, similar assists, better efficiency. He was carrying more of the load and delivering more of the results. The MVP voting in 2006 contains something that often disappears in the retelling. Nash won with 57 first-place votes and 924 total points. LeBron James finished second. Dirk Nowitzki finished third. Kobe Bryant, who was in the middle of one of the most extraordinary individual offensive seasons in NBA history, finished fourth. Not second, not narrowly behind Nash in a photogenic duel. Fourth in total points behind Nash, LeBron, and Dirk. Kobe averaged 35.4 points per game that season, the highest scoring average since Michael Jordan in 1986-87. On January 22nd, he put 81 points on Toronto, the second highest single-game total in the history of the sport. Earlier in the year, he had outscored the entire Dallas Mavericks team 62-61 through three-quarters of a game he didn't finish. He recorded 27 games of 40 or more points across the season. The individual case was not just strong, it was historically extraordinary, and Kobe finished fourth. The reason is not complicated. Even if it has been complicated by 2 decades of revisionism, the Lakers went 45-37 that year. They were the 7th seed in a deep Western Conference. Kobe's supporting cast, Smush Parker, Kwame Brown, a rotation of veterans on minimum deals, was broadly understood to be among the weakest any marquee player had carried in recent memory. The prevailing standard for MVP then, as now, required individual excellence to attach itself to team success. You had to be the most valuable player on a team that actually won, not just the most spectacular performer, regardless of standings. Nash was the best player on a 54-win team, without a co-star, producing a 50-40-90 season while leading the league in assists for the second straight year. The voters followed the evidence to the same conclusion, and looking at everything that evidence included, they were right. In the playoffs that spring, Phoenix came back from 3-1 against the Lakers and won in 7, a comeback that required Nash to close out games with the kind of controlled aggression he rarely needed during the regular season, when the system usually made the shots comfortable before they were even taken. He averaged over 20 points and 10 assists across all 20 playoff games that postseason, on shooting percentages that almost no guard in any era could maintain at that volume of possessions. They beat the Clippers in 7 in the second round. They eventually lost the Western Conference Finals to Dallas in 6 games, eliminated by the team that had let him go in the round before the finals. It was the closest Nash would come to the championship series during his peak in Phoenix. That reality, 2 MVPs, no finals, a handful of near misses against teams that won titles, is part of why the debate about his legacy stays alive. But the question of whether he deserved those trophies is separate from whether his teams were built well enough to win championships. The MVP is not the championship. It asks a specific question about a specific player in a specific season. And for 2 consecutive seasons, the answer to that question pointed clearly in one direction. Here is the clearest version of the positive case. The award is called Most Valuable Player, not Most Individually Spectacular, not Highest Scorer, Most Valuable. And value in basketball means the delta. What changes when this player is on the floor versus off it? What the team can accomplish with him versus without him. By that standard, Nash's claim was about as clean as the award ever produces. In 2004-05, his first season back in Phoenix, the Suns won 33 more games than the prior year. That kind of single-season improvement does not happen from coaching changes and friendly scheduling alone. The statistical evidence tracked consistently all season, 60-15 with Nash, 2-5 without him. A gap in team efficiency estimated at roughly 15 points per 100 possessions with Nash on versus off. That is not a system bonus. That is a player who makes a team function at an entirely different level. In 2005-06, the case became even cleaner because the variables were stripped away. Stoudemire gone, key contributors gone, the prior season's supporting infrastructure largely dismantled. And Nash still produced 54 wins, still led the league in assists, still hit the 50-40-90 threshold, still made Boris Diaw a most improved player, and kept the Suns' offense among the best in the league. He did it while improving his own scoring by more than 3 points per game and setting career highs in multiple categories at 32 years old. The argument that Nash only won because the system inflated him collapses against 2005-06. Systems do not win 54 games without their most important player. Systems do not turn replacement-level contributors into MIP candidates when the franchise's primary star is in surgery. The 7 seconds or less offense was a genuine structural innovation. D'Antoni built it, Nash operated it, but Nash was not a passenger inside somebody else's machine. He was the machine's indispensable component. Remove him, and Phoenix was a middle-tier playoff team at best. Keep him, and they were a division champion with the most efficient offense in basketball. There is also a historical dimension to what Nash accomplished that tends to get flattened by the noise of the controversy. Before Nash, only Bob Cousy and Magic Johnson had won MVP awards as pure point guards, players whose primary value was making everyone else better rather than dominating possessions in isolation. Nash joined that lineage and extended it in an era when the MVP conversation was dominated by traditional big men and scoring wings. Shaq was winning championships. Kobe was averaging 35 points. LeBron was becoming LeBron. Nash was threading bounce passes through closing defenders and converting pull-up jumpers at 51%. The year after his second MVP, he averaged 18.6 points and 11.6 assists per game, the first player since Magic Johnson in 1990-91 to average 18 and 11 simultaneously, and finished MVP runner-up to Dirk Nowitzki. His peak wasn't a one-year burst. It was a 3-year sustained argument that the best way to win basketball games was to put the right ball in the right place at the right time, every time, without hesitation. Some of the criticism was fair. Nash was never an elite defender, and the Suns' defensive ratings reflected that. Shaq's candidacy in 2005 was genuine, and the margin was real. The Kobe mythology of 2005-06, the 81 points and the 40-game scoring streaks, and the sheer volume of individual brilliance made the debate emotionally compelling in a way that pure value analysis doesn't fully capture. These were not dishonest arguments. They were the right arguments to have. But the voters in 2005 and in 2006 were answering the question the award actually asks. And both times the evidence led them to Nash. Quentin Richardson, his teammate during both MVP runs, spoke about something that rarely surfaces in statistical arguments. On the day Richardson signed with the Suns, Nash voluntarily accepted a pay reduction reportedly over $1 million so that Richardson's deal could fit under the salary cap. He gave back money so the team could add a piece he needed. That impulse to subordinate personal financial gain to collective success was the same one that showed up in every accurate pass, every correct read, every invitation of teammates onto the MVP stage. Nash was never trying to win individually. He was trying to win basketball games. Joe Johnson, speaking years later about what those Phoenix teams felt like from inside, said Nash was the real floor general. The kind of point guard where your only job as a teammate was to be in the right place, because he was going to find you. The kind of player where, when he was out, the game became inexplicably hard. When he was in, the game opened up in ways that were difficult to describe to anyone who wasn't standing on that court feeling it. That feeling, that clarity a great floor general brings to every possession. Impossible to fully quantify, but absolutely real, is what the voters were trying to capture when they kept writing his name at the top of the ballot. And the evidence across 2 full seasons backed them up every time. Mark Cuban knew it too, by the time it mattered. He acknowledged in various forms over the years that letting Nash go was one of the largest miscalculations of his ownership tenure. The player whose body he was worried about went on to play another 11 seasons, won 2 MVPs in the first 2 of them, made 5 more All-NBA teams after leaving Dallas, and kept averaging double-digit assists until his late 30s. The longevity argument Cuban made to justify not matching the offer became the longest, most decorated counterargument in modern NBA history. For a player who was booed at his own draft, traded away by the team that picked him, and declined a matching offer by the franchise he had spent 6 seasons helping make relevant, the trophies were not gifts. They were proof evidence against the assumption that you had to be the loudest thing in the arena or the most physically overwhelming force on the floor to be the most valuable player in the league. Nash showed that value could look like a perfectly weighted bounce pass, finding a cutter before the defender had turned his head. It could look like a 50-40-90 season in the middle of a campaign everyone expected the Suns to lose because their co-star was in surgery. It could look like a team that went from 29 wins to 62 in one off-season and couldn't explain the difference without saying one name. It could look like 2 MVPs that nobody handed him, 2 MVPs he earned.